Hey class, this is the video lecture for Tuesday, April 21st. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more about fake news. We're going to start off with a video. I don't have the link page, so what I'm going to do is pause the videos and let you just Google it and restart this video. So first video we're going to watch is from my professor slash editor slash former boss, Buddy Stein of the Riverdale Press. Riverdale section is an upscale section of the Bronx. And give me 1 second here, sorry. Let me close this. And he's been the editor for a long time, taught at Hunter College, Cuny School of Journalism. He launched some South Bronx newspapers with conjunction with Hunter College and others, and that's how I got my start. And the office got firebombed due to the fact that they posted an op-ed about Salman Rushdie's satanic verses. And luckily nobody died. And then in the 90s he won a Pulitzer Prize for his editorial reporting. And he's gonna introduce the topic when we talk about fake news.
What is fake news? And part of I guess the 30 years that have passed is that this was how we all got our news, whether it had been the Riverdale Press or the New York Times or whatever Wall Street Journal, whatever you read, and of course you got it off TV stations. Nowadays, media can come from anywhere. You could set up a blog that says anything on your own right now at very little cost and put out anything you want, and that could be shared or tweeted by literally millions. Absolutely. What do you think about the term fake news? Is there fake news? It's almost like a conflict in and of itself. Just give me your impression of that.
Well, I think we ought to consign that phrase to the dustbin of history, first of all, because it's ideologically fraught. Of course, sometimes a news outlet gets it wrong. A responsible news outlet corrects those mistakes as soon as they are pointed out to them or as soon as they recognize them. But you're absolutely right about the impact of the internet and of social media. And it becomes the job of a citizen to understand where whatever set of facts they think they know, where do those come from? How does the person know who's blogging or who's putting it on Facebook or tweeting it or who's publishing it in the New York Times
or repeating it on Facebook or something?
Yeah,
I mean, I see a lot of the headlines and things that I'm like, wow, take a look at this. And then I look and it's from some independent paper or some independent source that I've never heard of before. But here's what I want to weigh in. And again, Richie, you can have a shot at it after Buddy deals with it. The President of the United States will stand at a press conference in front of the White House and say, CNN, I don't want to talk to you because you're fake news. And the New York Times is fake news. Now, I'm at a loss for words when I hear that, because yes, maybe there are some things that are slanted, maybe there are some things that are editorial, maybe they do get some things wrong, but that debases all media in a way. And then of course he doesn't say that about his favorite.
Well, it also debases the whole idea that there is such a thing as truth, and that's what's frightening. And I'll tell you a little story. I joined a Facebook group called Bronx Open Eyes on Trump, because I was interested in knowing what Trump supporters, who are my neighbors,
and what people in the Bronx are saying.
Yes.
So I can relate to that, by the way.
Can I jump in here for a minute? I'm having a little trouble hearing Buddy, but I can hear you, Gary.
Okay, let him, we'll tell them that, but let him finish and then
Okay,
I'll repeat it if I have to.
Okay.
So somebody put up on this website, on this Facebook group, a supposed press release from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And it made no sense. Right? It was a tweet.
But just the notion.
Oh, wait, let me finish.
Yeah.
It was a tweet. So I went to Twitter. And the Twitter account says clearly parody of Alexandria, of AOC. Parody. Right? I decided, okay, I'm going to post a comment saying this is a parody. The original poster came back and said, well, it didn't look on Twitter the way it looked. I'd done a screenshot. Didn't look on Twitter, my Twitter, the way it looks on your Twitter. Well,
I
simple
don't know
enough.
what that means.
Simple enough. Go to Twitter and look. And he came back and said, no, it's definitely her. So people, the scary thing is when people become impervious to correction or to facts.
Understanding that, yeah.
We all have our own facts now.
Right. Richie, I don't know if you heard what he said, but he was just talking about trying to interpret what's out there, and then how do you
I
determine?
understand. I just wanted to say that Buddy will be leading a seminar on May 19th at a neighborhood university hosted by Riverdale Neighborhood House. So if people want to hear a more extended version of what
That was
he said,
last year.
that would be a great
It's
chance
not happening
to hear it and
this
to
year.
go to Neighborhood House's website in a few days when they put up the information about it.
That is good to know, but he won't need to do that because we're just going to extend this program to another hour. Get it all done here.
Okay.
And Buddy, you're still involved, of course, and Richie too. Where are we at in the Bronx? I mean, I could list the newspapers we have. We have the Riverdale Press, we have the Nova News.
All right, so just getting into the thing about fake news. Like Professor Stein was saying, it's up to us to be responsible, but unfortunately things are getting worse. People are not. So let's get into the lesson. We're going to look at 2018, after the midterm elections, when the Democrats retook control of the House. Trump was in the mood and went off at CNN reporters at a news conference. So let's watch that. And let me know what you guys think about what Professor Stein said in the comments.
One of the statements that you made in the tail end of the campaign, in the midterms, that
Here we go.
That, well, if you don't mind, Mr. President, that this caravan was an invasion. As you know, Mr.
I
President,
consider it to be an
as you know,
invasion.
Mr. President, the caravan was not an invasion. It's a group of migrants moving up from Central America towards the border with the U.S.
Thank you for telling
And
me.
why did you characterize it as such?
Because I consider it an invasion. You and I have a difference of
But
opinion.
do you think that you demonized immigrants in
Not
this
at all.
election
No, not
to
at all.
try to keep?
I want them to come into the country, but they have to come in legally. You know, they have to come in, Jim, through a process. I want it to be a process, and I want people to come in, and we need the people.
Your campaign.
Wait. You know why we need the people, Daji? Because we have hundreds of companies moving in. We need the people.
Your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and
Well,
so
that's
on.
true. But they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing
They
that.
weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. These were people. This was an actual. You know, it happened a few days ago, and
They're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of
You know
miles
what?
away. That's
I
not
think
an
you
invasion.
should, honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN,
All right.
and if you did it well, your ratings.
Let me
would be
ask
much
you,
better.
if I may
Okay,
ask
that's
one other
enough.
question, Mr. President. If I may ask
Peter,
one
go
other
ahead.
question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's
Mr.
enough.
President,
That's
I was
enough.
going to ask one of the other folks.
That's
that had-
enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr.
Excuse me.
President,
That's enough.
Mr. President, I have one other
Peter,
question,
let's
if
go.
I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned
indictments-
about anything with
You
the
may have
Russian
indictments coming
investigation because it's a hoax.
Are you,
That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation? Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible. You shouldn't treat people that way. Go ahead. Go ahead, Peter, go ahead.
In Jim's defense, I've traveled with him and watched him. He's a diligent reporter who busts
Well,
his
I'm
butt
not a
like
big
the rest
fan
of
of
us.
yours either, so
I understand.
to be honest.
So let me ask you a question if I can. You repeatedly said,
You aren't the best.
Mr. President, you repeatedly, over the course
Okay,
of the...
just sit down, please. Well, when you report fake news, when you report fake news, which CNN does a lot, you are the enemy of the people. Go ahead.
Mr. President, over the course of the last several days of the campaign, sir, at the end of the campaign, you repeatedly said that Americans need to fear Democrats. You said Democrats would unleash a wave of violent crime that endangers families everywhere. Why are you pitting Americans? Why are you pitting Americans against one another, sir?
Peter, what are you trying to be him?
No, I'm
Peter,
just asking the question.
Let me just tell you. Very simple. If because they're very weak on crime.
The question, to be clear, though, the question,
Thank you very much.
why are you
sit down?
But the question, but you didn't answer my question. Just very simply, the question is, why are you pitting Americans against one another, sir?
I'm not.
Is that how you view
No, I'm not.
citizens
Well,
of this
I'll
country?
tell you what. We won a lot of elections last night. We did very well last night.
But in many ways,
I think
it's divided the country.
I think it's going to have a very positive impact. I watched NBC this morning. They didn't report it exactly correctly, but that's very, very. That's the fact with NBC. Nothing I can do about that. But I want this country to have protection. We want security in our country. I want security.
If it's Mr. President, just wait. If it's unfair to the country and it's costing millions of dollars, why don't you just
Give him the mic,
end it?
please. I've answered the question. Go ahead, take. Well, I'll give you I will give you voter suppression. You just have to sit down, please. Sit down. I didn't call you. I'll give you voter suppression. Take a look at the CNN polls, how inaccurate they were. That's called voter suppression. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'm not responding. I'm responding to. Excuse me. I'm not responding to you. I'm talking to this gentleman. Will you please sit down? Excuse me. Would you please sit down? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President. Now that the House of
Very
Representatives
hostile. It's such a hostile media. It's so sad. You asked me about. No, you rudely interrupted him. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President.
So, what do you guys think? What do you think of the way that Trump treated the reporters? What do you think about the way that Trump accused the reporters of treating him? So, out of this meeting, a few things happened. We'll look at the joke thing in a little bit, but I wanted to just go off into what wasn't seen during that time. So if you don't know, Sarah Huckabee is the press officer for the White House. And so when you heard that exchange with I think his name is Jim Acosta, you might not have seen something. So there was a little altercation where a press aide, an intern, went up and tried to tell Mr. Acosta to sit back down, and he wasn't having it. But I want you to see this video that Sarah Huckabee retweeted. So right off first glance, what do you guys think of that video? It seems legit, but unfortunately it's not. So this video was altered by, I think it was InfoWars. And if you don't know what InfoWars is, it's a ridiculous far right-wing conspiracy theory website that posts a lot of quote-unquote BS. So what they did was, very sneakily, they sped up that part where the reporter, Mr. Acosta, presses his hand down to make it look more aggressive, and it's hard to catch. So by speeding it up, it looks more aggressive and makes the reporter and CNN seem like the aggressors. Makes it seem like he was being inappropriate with the intern. He's trying to just do his job. He's trying to see that. What do you think? Have you guys heard of this before? Let me know in the discussion. And the dangerous thing is that the White House press secretary had retweeted an altered video. That gets very, very dangerous. And we'll look, the United States looks for their leaders, their White House, for leadership. But what happens when the White House is, and members of the White House are spreading falsehoods? We'll look at that towards the end of this class with the coronavirus, but I wanted to move on. Let me just pull some quotes from the reading to make sense, the rest of the article. Sanders' tenuous relationship with the truth is on display almost every time she addresses the White House press pool. She has lied about everything from economic statistics to administration policy to statements the president made that were clearly documented on video or audio, all to make the president look good. She also has a knack for misleading and, I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, obfuscating the truth. She thrives in gray areas where she can avoid the objective truth without being called an outright liar. Okay. As Washington Post columnist Jennifer Rubin writes, and let me know if you agree with this opinion, Sanders apparently has no moral qualms about misleading the American people over and over. despite the oath she took to the country. Remember, she took an oath to the country, not to the president, in deliberately misleading or passing on misleading information. Sanders is not serving the American people. She is thwarting democratic government and enabling Trump's attempts to free himself of investigations. So, yes, the president is her boss, but she took an oath to the country, and she should, I don't know, she's not going to go against him. But maybe she should. Maybe she should resign. Why did she take that position? Who knows? So some things that they're calling for is a walkout by the press. People are saying, you know what? Why should we go to these meetings if Trump is going to berate us? He's going to lie and all these things. So there's a whole movement right after this happened to call all the White House press corps. So the White House press corps are a group of reporters, and from like one reporter from CNN, one from New York Times, one from all over the place, different organizations. Sometimes what they do is they pool. So let's say collectively as a class where we follow the president and we're from different organizations, but something happens. So one of us would go and give the notes to everybody to write it. So they do a pool like that. What do you think the press can do? Why do they even have the I don't know if they have it anymore, but there was some debate about having the White House Correspondents' Dinner, where the press and the president get together and laugh. And you can look at that when Obama was president. I don't think it's been done in a while with Trump. It was funny, but again, they shouldn't have. There was some talks about not having it there, even back then. Sorry. So let's go back to the joke from the Daily Show here. I'll show you guys, because there was a lot of footage that you didn't see from Donald Trump press conference that time where he was going off. Let me just close these other links here.
He had to take questions from a bunch of people who couldn't even speak American.
So how you focus on the trade issue with Japan? Would you ask Japan to do more, or would you change your tone?
I really don't understand.
Is the election of two Muslim women. One of them is veiled to the House, which is making history. Is this a rebuke of this message, do you think?
What you're saying. What?
President Erdogan said he's not going to follow your sanctions and he's going to keep buying oil from...
Who said that?
President Erdogan. Turkey.
I know.
I know exactly. I know. Yeah. You tell me first, but I know. What the hell's going on there? Trump can't understand anyone with an accent? That would be so weird because he lives with Melania, okay? That makes no sense. Absolutely no sense. Unless that's probably why they're still together. She's like, Donald, I want divorce. I don't understand what you're saying. I want divorce. Okay, fine. I'll get you a horse. Every day, she asks for a horse. So cute. She says she wants to file. You don't need to file for a horse. You can just get one, baby. I'll just buy you one. So now, at this point in the day, we're like, all right, forget the Democrats in the House. Clearly, the big news of the day is now going to be Trump and his fiery press conference.
All right, moving on. So fake news has always existed since the beginning of news. But the thing is, when we refer to fake news actually refers to an article that's wrong. So if I were to write an article, if somebody in the class was going to write an article about me, and let's say they misstated my parents' nationality as from Indonesia, I don't know, whatever, that's fake news. The thing with Trump, he's used this term to enable his voter base and people that support him and say that regular articles that are fact-based are fake, which miscues the term and confuses a lot of people and uses it in his favor, because people believe in fake news and they say, oh, they're not aware that these legitimate organizations have safeguards in place to stop from fake news. As we saw in the last class, when Jason Blair, that was a huge scandal and it discredited New York Times. That would probably, that happened like 12 years ago. So there's a lot of things in place to prevent that from happening. So here's some other videos and other things about fake news, where fake news has always existed. So here's a video from the 1950s, produced by the U.S. Government. Sorry, 1940s.
bright sunny day with the air fresh and clean. Not a rumor was stirring, except in the latrine.
Produced by
Hiya,
Dr.
Stampo.
Seuss.
What's new?
Oh, nothing much. Nice day.
Nice day for a bombing.
Yeah, nice bombing weather. Bombing weather. Bombing weather.
Sounds harmless enough. Innocent stuff. But let's take a look in and find out what's cooking.
Bombing weather. Bombing weather. Bombing weather. Bombing weather. Bombing weather. Just between you and me, pal, I hear we're in for a bombing.
The hot air is blowing. A rumor is growing.
They're gonna bomb us. They're gonna bomb us. Hear about the bombing. Hear about the bombing. They bombed us. Did you hear about a terrible bombing last night? Well, I heard it on good authority. Heck of it's harmless.
Balloon juice. It's phony, but it makes nice baloney. That's right. Exaggerate it. Stretch it. Multiply it. Now shoot off your face. And baloney is flying all over the place.
Worst air raid of the war. Yeah. They blasted the hell out of Brooklyn Bridge. Coney Island was wiped out. What's the matter with our plane? They popped them off like kites.
The British are quitting.
The Chinese gave up. It's all over. We've lost the war. Rumors! Nice weather for a rumor, ain't it?
Yes, so the U.S. government put that out to prevent the spread of fake news. I think we need something like that that is shown to everyone before movies, an updated version about sharing things on Facebook, maybe even when kids are younger. I mean, you guys are learning about fake news here in college, but I think kids need to learn about that even earlier in middle school. All right, and so you've probably all seen some type of fake news, excuse me, when you went to the supermarket, when you're about to check out in the aisle, all these crazy magazines, and one of the most ridiculous covers is the Bat Boy cover. And I remember seeing this as a child and believing it and just asking my mom a bunch of questions like, what is this? Where is this kid? I'm scared. Obviously not true. And then there's a bunch. So we go into this article here, the long violent history of fake news, and I've pulled out selected text from it. One of the things, we'll go over a few of the examples. Let me know any other examples that you guys remember or heard about in other classes of fake news, and I'll tell you one at the end of this. Let me just make a note so I remember. So one of the things that the Nazis put out was that Jewish people were drinking child's blood. They were literally some part of religious ceremony, that they were physically harming and hurting children. Some other examples, in the Lisbon earthquake of 1755 was one of the more complex news stories of all time, with the church and many European authorities blaming the natural disaster on divine retribution against sinners. An entire genre of fake news pamphlets emerged in Portugal, claiming that some survivors owed their life to an apparition of the Virgin Mary. These religiously inspired accounts of the earthquake sparked the Enlightenment philosopher Voltaire to attack religious explanations of natural events, and also made Voltaire into an activist against fake religious news. Remember, if you go back to Mass 1, at this time, the Catholic Church was the most powerful thing in Europe. Moving on to other examples. Even our glorified founders were perpetrators of fake news for political means to whip up revolutionary fervor. Ben Franklin himself concocted propaganda stories about murderous scalping Indians, working in league with the British King George III. Other revolutionary leaders published fake propaganda stories that King George was sending thousands of foreign soldiers to slaughter American patriots and turn the tide of the War of Independence. All this to get people to enlist and support the revolutionary cause. Other examples, and text from the reading. Sensationalism has always sold well. By the early 19th century, modern newspapers came onto the scene, touting scoops and exposés, but also fake stories to increase circulation. One of the biggest, I think I showed you guys this last week or Mass 1, I'll just open it up again, was the New York Sun's Great Moon Hoax of 1835. It claimed that a guy had a special telescope that he could see to the moon, and when he looked in the telescope, he saw an alien civilization on the moon. Because of this story and the sales that promoted it, because it was like we were posting pieces every day, it established the New York Sun as one of the most leading profitable newspapers. In 1844, anti-Catholic newspapers in Philadelphia falsely claimed that Irishmen were stealing Bibles from public schools, leading to violent riots and attacks on Catholic churches. Here's some other examples. During the Gilded Age, yellow journalism flourished using fake interviews, false experts, and bogus stories to spark sympathy and rage as desired. Joseph Pulter's New York World published exaggerated crime dramas to sell papers. In the 1890s, plutocrats like William Randolph Hearst in his morning journal used exaggeration to help spark the Spanish-American War. When Hearst correspondents in Havana wired that there would be no war, Hearst, the inspiration for Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, famously responded, "You furnish the pictures, I'll furnish the war." So basically he meant, give me some pictures that I can use and I'll make up the story. Hearst published fake drawings of Cuban officials strip-searching American women, and he got his war. It's good for his sales. And moving on, it wasn't until the rise of web-generated news that our era journalistic norms were seriously challenged, and fake news became a powerful force again. Digital news, you might say, has brought yellow journalism back to the fore. For one, algorithms that create news feeds and complications have no regard for accuracy and objectivity. At the same time, the digital news trend has decimated the force, measured in both money and manpower, of the traditional, objectively minded independent press, as we saw in the last week. So one thing that's happening now is with Russia, Putin, and the coronavirus. So Russia has been putting out fake news about the coronavirus throughout its neighboring states in Europe, and has led to protests, and I think, I'm not entirely sure, but it led to protests and violence. And why? They want to, Russia wants to make chaos in its neighbor states so they can exert control and take over. I don't know if you guys remember, I think it was last year, there was some protest in South America, and it came out that Russia was involved. Russia wasn't the cause of these protests. There was a lot of underlying issues. So for example, in Ecuador, they owed money to the World Bank and other foreign creditors. So they raised the price of gas, and a lot of people could not afford it. And they were saying, why make us pay when you can do other cuts? It falls onto the poor people. So they protested, and they got that subsidy reversed, and they could pay. I think they went from $1 to $2, and then back down to $1 for a liter of gas or something like that. But what they were saying was, what intelligence agencies found out was that Russia was increasing and amping it up throughout, because many of these countries in Latin America who had these protests had spoken out against Venezuela, which is in the corner of Latin America, South America, and is a partner with Russia due to their oil connects and things like that. So they wanted to have all this chaos to sort of like sidetrack them from what was going on in Venezuela, which is crazy. So moving on, here's an article that's really interesting. It came out in 2016. It talks about two people. I'm going to read this quote here, but I want you to read about their background first. It talks about two people who literally, and I want to open it because I want to show you the photo here. All they do all day, they're kind of like, forgive me for being politically incorrect, losers, although they're not anymore. They've sold to the political side and things like that. All they did was stay home like in a barren apartment and create fake news. So first off, here's some stuff from the reading. These two guys graduated from the University of Tennessee, Wade in 2012 with an advertising degree, and Goldman in 2013 with a business degree. But they could not find jobs. They could only find unpaid internships and ended up working at a Mexican restaurant. So they started somehow, if you read the article, to get into fake news, and they made a lot of money. So super great election sales, he says. There were some days they were getting 13 to 14 per 1,000 views. Between June and August, they say they had fewer than 1,500 Facebook followers. They made between 10,000 and 40,000 every month running advertisements that, among other things, promise acne solutions, Viagra alternatives, way to remove lip lines, cracked feet, defat, and the 13 sexiest and most naked celebrities selfies. Then the political drama deepened and their audience expanded fivefold. Now Goldman sometimes thinks that he has made in the last 6 months what would take him 20 years waiting tables at his old job. So imagine if they were making 10 to 40,000 every month based on that audience they had. Their audience increased fivefold. They're making over 100,000 a month writing fake news. They literally, here's a part, where does it say? They just write headlines and think of crazy things to say. So one of parts in the story says he wrote the headline, proof. There's actually no proof. North Korea experiments on humans. Published the story and made $120 off 10 minutes of work. He says it was a revelation. We have to trick people into reading the news. People love fake news. I mean, we all know people we know that have fake news. I have old coworkers. I have an uncle. I have aunts. What you saw with the Tyler Perry thing. You have to tell them, listen, this is fake news. Stop sharing this. You know, you have to call them out on it, even if it's embarrassing for them, embarrassing for you. You have to try to stop it when you see it, because people who don't get called on it will keep doing it. Or even sometimes you call them out on it and they still do it. All successful journalism has shock value. Goldman says as he and Wade sit at the computers later that day. So if you read this article, I'll leave it up here for a little bit so you can Google it. Again, I talked about this previously when we talked about journalism. Everything is about clicks. And so I want to know your opinion in discussion. If these people are making money off these Facebook ads, right? Off these fake headlines, fake news websites and stuff, and posting it on Facebook, and Facebook is making money, what should Facebook do? I know Facebook has this thing where you can look on it and it says that it's fake, but that doesn't always happen. Why doesn't Facebook work fast enough? Other sites. Twitter all said it would stop posting things. I forgot the exact headline, but they were doing something to stop the spread of fake news. So here's an update. One of those guys was running for Nevada State Assembly. I don't think that he won, but let's see. He lost in the general election. But this article, and he had made so much money, look at the votes. He got pretty close, right? For a guy who's just making fake news, how could he garner that much support? Trust me, guys, voting in local elections is hard. Like, ask people that you know who's voted in a local election, nobody votes. So you have to fight for these votes. And it's crazy that he got that many votes and that he almost won. That's scary. And it came out later that these two guys, in sort of doing what they were doing, making fake news articles and stuff like that had linked up with a business person in Macedonia, overseas, another country, and they had teamed up with this content farm to create fake news. Supposedly overseas, they have these places where hundreds of people work, and all they do all day is create fake news and spread it on Facebook, Instagram, and social media. Supposedly, they have them in Russia and other countries as well, in India. And think about it: if people don't have a source of income there, it's very low. They can get paid, somewhat substandard amount to just be in a computer all day spreading stuff. So they did it 6 months before election day, and this is all ties back to Trump and the spread of fake news, and the fact that Russia was supposedly involved in the elections. And you'll see that when you see the movie later in the semester with The Greatest Hack. So it's interesting when you read that article, one of the papers that they had, this is a trickery that they do for fake news, it was called USA Politics Today. So it's kind of playing on like a bunch of titles. So we have USA Today, which is a legit paper. So think about your aunt on Facebook that's always sharing fake news. She might not catch that when it says USA Politics Today. She might automatically think USA Today. So this is how they trick little by little into these things. It's also, I don't know if there's anything Politics Today or things like that, but they play on the names. All right, so what can we do? As viewers, what can we do? We can use sites like Snoops, PolitiFact, and things like that to verify fake news. So let's look at, we talked about Mrs. Huckabee earlier in the class. Let's look at some of the things that she's lied about or told the truth about. She said tear gas was used on average once a month during the Obama administration for very similar circumstances. I don't know the context about that, but it was true. President Trump in his first year and a half has already tripled what American Obama did for African Americans in 8 years. That's false. And of course, if you click on this, let's see. We can get the whole expanded thing, what she's referring to, the context, the background, the articles, and everything. So we have to look at this. People need to take their time. People don't want time. People are, even if people are home, you have to share, you have to do all these things and look it up. People don't want to do that. So very short video lesson today because I want you to get into discussion. You also have media blog 3 to work on for this week. So let's say I see an article, right? I don't like, and I've done this before. It's on Twitter. We look about the coronavirus and Trump, right? And somebody posts that article. Oh, sorry. Let me go back. Mention the coronavirus and Trump. So the thing now that's going on with Trump is how do we differentiate if our leader is telling falsehoods and lies? How do we stop that? What can the news organizations do? They're airing Trump, and you have to understand it's election year. Trump is trying to get reelected, and any other president would do the same thing. So some news organizations, and he has an hour on TV every day. He's even boasted about he's done better. We saw in class when we actually weren't in the classroom that Monday Night Football is a top thing. He said he has better ratings than some of the shows and football, which doesn't really tie into people actually dying in the coronavirus. Like, who really cares? And it's sad, some of the things he said, because I don't know about you guys. Some of my students lost family members. I've lost extended family members. My family could be sick. And to hear Trump say things that are not true. He said, one of the first things I remember him saying was everybody that needs a test can get a test. That wasn't in, I think, late February, early March. It's impossible to get a test. You have to lie to actually get a test. And that's in New York State that's testing the most. So I don't know if you guys went home to other states, but for us here in New York State, we have so much capacity. I'm okay, but early this month, I thought I may have had something. So my mother called to get me tested. Mind you, Stony Brook University is testing 1,000 people a day. They never call me back because my symptoms weren't that severe. And I know other people that said you just have to lie, that saying, I mean, you don't want to go to the hospital, because you go to the hospital, you're going to probably get more sick. But people have lied. Yes, I do. I'm coughing it. You know, my aunt told me that one of her friends was sick, and they wouldn't test us. So the friend called back and said, yes, I'm coughing. Yes, I have this high fever. You know, because we don't have the adequate testing, the lying is pushing us to the people that really need to get tested. So, you know, now there's talks about restarting the nation without the testing. Other countries that have done well, look at Germany. It's because of the contact tracing and testing. Everybody gets tested. If, let's say, for example, we were in a class, right? And I tested positive, everybody in the class, all of us would get tested, and all our families would get tested. In some countries, they have an app on the phone, so they could tell, did you leave your house? Where did you go? Who you contacted, right? And everybody who was in contact with you that might have gotten in contact gets an alert on their phone. So we're a long ways from that. And now governors are starting to push back on Trump, saying, you know, where's the test? We can't get tests. So let me know what you think about that. Should the big media organizations stop airing his press conference? And then lastly, sorry, going back, give me a second here. Going back to the thing, when you share an article, when you write a post on an article, even though you don't agree with the article, you're increasing engagement on that article and making people post things like that. And we're going to end the class on this video. So if the video is too long to view in my video, or you want to view it somewhere else, like on your TV, you can just Google the title. It's on YouTube. And I'm looking forward to seeing your discussions. And remember, on Thursday, we have a live class where we're going to talk about your media blogs. First post is due tomorrow. The response is due on Wednesday.
Fake news. Lots of things probably come to mind when you hear the words fake news. But what you may not realize is that fake news is your fault. And I'm not talking about news that you just don't like. I'm talking about news that isn't real. I've worked in the media industry for more than 10 years. It's fun and it's exciting because it's always changing, but I've also seen the dangers of it. When I was a reporter in Fort Myers, I worked with Haley Hines. Now she's an anchor in Tampa. And one day she was at work and she was being bombarded with notifications on her cell phone. People were saying some pretty hurtful things. She was even getting death threats and she had no idea why. So she put her investigative journalism skills to work. And she found out that all of that hate online stemmed from one tweet, and it came from a stranger across the country. Earlier in the day, a video started going viral, and it was of a blonde woman in a nail salon saying racist things to a woman who worked at the nail salon. And for some reason, this stranger in California tweeted that that blonde woman was Haley. It looks nothing like her, but she tweeted that. And then other people started sharing it. On Facebook, they were even screen grabbing her picture and sharing it. One person on Twitter with a verified account, with the word journalist in his bio, and with more than 2 million followers, retweeted it. Haley was online like crazy, saying, "This wasn't me, this wasn't me." She even told Twitter what was happening. And Twitter said it didn't go against their guidelines. Haley was an innocent victim of fake news. And fake news exists because of people like you. Now, I'm not accusing you of doing something like what this woman in California did, but I am accusing you of sharing or commenting or liking something before you really knew it was true or not. That's why you need to use care before you share. And there are 3 ways that you can do this. Today, we are all members of the media. You want more and more content. So the media is creating more and more content, but the staff that they pay, that's not enough. They need more. So they get some contributors. I was one of those contributors to the HuffPost for a while. And I could publish anything without anybody taking a second look at it. I never took advantage of that privilege, but some people did. There was a contributor for Forbes who was illegally accepting money under the table from people who wanted to be mentioned in Forbes. So when you're reading Forbes and you see somebody's in there, you're probably going to think they're credible, they're an authority in their industry, when really they just paid a contributor a few $100 to get in there. So what's traditional? What's real? What's editorial? What's an advertisement? The lines are blurred. There's a lot of shady things happening behind the scenes that many people at the media outlet don't even know about, and especially you as consumers. So that's why you need to use care before you share. You also need to remember that social media is media. So when people are constantly blaming the media for something, they're blaming you. And it's out of control. Our government doesn't know how to regulate it. Law enforcement doesn't know. Even the social media outlets themselves don't know how to control what's happening online, because millions and millions and millions of people are using these platforms every single day. And if you watch The Real Housewives, you know what I mean. People like the drama, and they want to be a part of it. That's why you need to use care before you share. And finally, you control the media. And I'm not talking about social media and what you post on your own platforms. I'm talking about traditional media. When I was in TV, we would come into work and there would be a piece of paper on the wall and it would tell us the ratings from the day before. And 9 times out of 10, when we went from a negative story to a positive story, everybody changed the channel. Even though everybody wants to complain that they don't watch the news because it's so negative, the data shows that's what people are watching. The next time you see a story about a Kardashian or a Jenner, whichever one is your favorite, head to the comment section. Most of what you're going to see is, why is this family famous? I'm so sick of them. Get them off my news feed. But you know what all those comments do? They just drive up engagement. So the news outlet that posted that story, they're not reading your comments. They don't care about what your comments say. They just care you're commenting. So they're going to say, oh, this story about Chloe, that got a whole lot of engagement. Let's give them more of that. Remember the game you played when you were little called Telephone? A message would start one way, and then by the time it got to the end, it was all distorted. That's kind of like what the media industry has turned into. But this one is worse, because everybody sees this one, and it can ruin lives, just like it could have ruined my friend Haley's life. So, if you hate it, ignore it. If it's positive, engage with it. And if you don't know, research it. Use care before you share, because you are the media. Thank you.
All right, I'm looking forward to reading your media responses and seeing all of you guys live again on Thursday. Hope you have a good one.